Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, coming at you with another Universal Monsters review. This time we are all the way up to 1943 with Son of Dracula. This is the third film in Universal's Dracula series. I have it as part of this Legacy Collection, which is part of the box set. And this third film, it's definitely the most different. It has very little to do with the previous two. Which, in fact, this time we even have Lon Chaney Jr. playing the Count, because by this time, by 43, he had already played the Wolfman. And I'm not sure when Ghost of Frankenstein was. I think at this point he had already played Frankenstein Monster as well. So he was kind of already becoming the next Man of a Thousand Faces, previously held by his father, Lon Chaney Sr., and for a while even Boris Karloff. But this film, it is different. It's the first Dracula film to take him out of Europe and into America. He's down in the Deep South. It's the first one to show a vampire turning into a bat and vice versa, whereas before it was implied. And I'll say the visual effects, as far as the bat goes, I mean, I liked it better in Abbott Costello Meet Frankenstein. I'm not docking it for looking cheesy. I mean, it's 1943. But the vapor effects I actually liked. Because this is another thing. I don't think vampires had been able to turn into vapor before, at least before this film, or at least in this series. Here they can. Which I thought the vapor effects were alright. It was done by John P. Fulton, who was the chief effects artist in The Invisible Man. And The Invisible Man still has some of the best visual effects I've ever seen. Not in the same sense of like John Carpenter's The Thing or The Fly. I mean, making someone look invisible. And Chaney as, well, the story was written by Kurt Siodmak, probably pronouncing that right. It was directed by Robert Siodmak. I do believe they're brothers. Yeah. Which Kurt also wrote The Wolfman. And from what I've read, I guess the director had serious doubts about this. And I guess his wife was encouraging him, just look a little bit better than other directors, and the studio will be pleased. And I guess within 3 days of shooting, he had a 7-year contract. So he was able to fool him. But Chaney Jr. as Dracula, he's definitely better as Dracula than he is the Frankenstein monster, because Frankenstein's monster, he literally just sat there. He might as well have just been a plank of wood. Here, he's got like a pencil and a Vincent Price mustache. He's mostly just doing like the Bela Lugosi stare. Like, he talks very like softly, kind of monotonously. Towards the end, when his coffin's on fire, he acts. But and I'm not shitting on the guy. He is a horror legend, but it seems like outside the Wolfman, or well, okay, Wolfman as Larry Talbot, he's great. But I guess more standalone films, unrelated to anything else, he also does well. But I wasn't the biggest fan of him as Dracula or Frankenstein's monster. I would actually say I prefer John Carradine to Chaney Jr. as Dracula, which after this, John Carradine would portray him in House of Frankenstein, House of Dracula, and Abbott Costello v. Frankenstein. The story to this one is there's this guy who owns this plantation down in New Orleans, and he dies, and he leaves his inheritance to his two daughters. One daughter gets his money, the other daughter gets his estate, Dark Oaks. And the one that gets the Dark Oaks is a daughter named Catherine, who's played by Louise Albritton. And the colonel, the guy that died, was played by George Irving. And Catherine has a bit of a taste for the dark and the strange. Coming to find out, she's dating this guy named Count Alucard, which anyone who's played Castlevania or knows anything about Dracula, they know what Alucard is. But she has like this long time boyfriend, Frank, that she's been estranged from. And yes, I do realize I sound terrible again. Where's the cast? Just so I get Frank's name. Played by Robert Page. He shows up, he's distraught because Catherine and Alucard were married. Alucard is putting like this threatening stance on him. So Frank goes to shoot him, but of course the bullet goes through him, hits Catherine, and she dies. Distraught, he turns himself in, and from then on, we have these two doctors. Frank Craven plays Dr. Brewster, and J. Edward Bromberg plays Professor Laszlo, who's Hungarian. So they're the ones that are putting together all this theories, like, well, they're obviously vampires. We gotta prove it to people. Well, Frank sits in jail. Because, of course, law enforcement thinks he did it. Then, like, Brewster shows up. He's like, no, I just talked to her, like, today after you, but you said you shot her yesterday, but she's still alive. And the way that Alucard and Catherine are, I guess, able to do whatever they do is they tell people that they're devoting their life to science by day, accepting visitors by night. It doesn't really come out and say which is which as far as is he a son or descendant of Dracula or is he Dracula. At one point, Catherine talking to Frank calls him, no, he is Count Dracula. But then Professor Laszlo speculates he must be some kind of a descendant. Probably my favorite scene would be when Brewster and Laszlo are talking about vampires, how they can be destroyed. Like, well, why don't we just go there during the day and destroy their bodies? And Laszlo says, well, vampires can take many forms. They could be a bat, they could be a werewolf, or they could even be vapor, which, again, we have not seen vapor in the previous films, but in this they are. And then we see in the background this vapor forms into Lon Chaney, so he knows that they're onto him, but they fight him off with the crucifix. And then basically the end of the movie is Catherine pretty much just wanted to be with Alucard so she could gain immortality. So she vapors or bats her way into Frank's cell, where she tells him, I did that so we can be immortal together. I'll tell you how to destroy him. He's already been bitten. And I will say, I do like the way they destroyed Dracula in this. I know I did do spoiler alert in my Dracula's Daughter review, so chances are, if you like Universal movies, you've probably already seen this. But I'm a big fan of all of them, and I recommend all Universal monster films, but I guess still, spoiler alert. Frank burns Dracula's coffin, because by burning his coffin, he now can't slumber in the way that will preserve him. Because if you don't know, which, yeah, if you don't know, even though this is the third movie, Dracula has to sleep in a coffin in his own home soil. And then right as it's burning, and I would say that this is probably the only time Lon Chaney really delivers any kind of acting, because he keeps grabbing Frank, yelling at him to put it out. Then of course the sun comes up, Dracula's destroyed, thus ending the spell over Catherine. And then law enforcement with the doctors come, and I think they burn Catherine's coffin, or they cremate her as well. I just got done watching it, but so far, because I've already seen, the 2 house films in Abbott Costello, so I've already seen all these Dracula movies already. I don't have to watch these 3 again. There still is the 31 Spanish version that I have to see, but I'd probably say this is my least favorite Dracula film. Even Dracula's Daughter had mood and atmosphere, and I thought the actress, Gloria Holden, did a great job. This, it's not that I disliked the film. I thought it was definitely the least interesting of the series. There were parts that were kind of boring. I didn't find Chaney as a very interesting Dracula, or Alucard, whichever one he's supposed to be. Which actually, I mean, House of Dracula, I did rant on that, but it was probably better than House of Dracula. But yeah, Son of Dracula, plus, like 7 years after the sequel, they were probably just at a point where they were just going really sequel happy. They were already almost halfway through the 40s. And Lon Chaney had already been the Wolfman, so they probably just wanted to get him, even though he's not even in heavy makeup in this film. Yeah, I just found this one to be the least entertaining, other than House of Dracula. But yeah, has barely anything to do with... Even Dracula's Daughter, with the exception of the beginning, you could kind of watch them as standalone films. Maybe if this was a standalone vampire film, like Vampire of New Orleans or something, it could have been a little bit better. But as it stands right now, I mean, it's definitely worth checking out, just for saying that, just because it's a Universal monster film, so it's worth seeing. But, if you think you're gonna get like a, I was gonna say Bela Lugosi. I don't mean that he's in it, but that caliber of vampire film, you'll probably be disappointed. But yeah, it's definitely one of my lesser favorites of the bunch. But yeah, that is 1943's Son of Dracula, and the last standalone Dracula film as far as Universal goes, because after this they got into all the Monster Mash ensemble films that I've already reviewed, so go check those out. But anyway, Son of Dracula. Thank you for watching.